Welcome, everybody, to Bus Therapy. Today is National Peanut Butter Lovers Day. Tell me, how do you feel about peanut butter?
Okay, should I do my intro now?
Yes, you do your intro now. That's a great intro. I love it so far. We're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. Stop laughing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bus Therapy with Ali and Today is National Peanut Butter Lovers Day.
Ooh. Ooh.
So, make sure you hold your peanut butter tight and give it all your love, because tonight is a day to celebrate the peanut butter.
It's like the Valentine's Day, but like for real though. Like Valentine's Day is lame.
Exactly.
This is real Valentine's Day. Peanut Butter Lovers Day.
This is real Valentine's Day.
Yeah, this is.
So sit back and relax with your peanut butter. Have a great time.
So tell me how do you feel about peanut butter?
Wait, is this like a real recording right now?
Yeah, it is
Can we
recording.
get into it?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Benjamin, keep that part. Keep that part where she asked if it was a real recording.
Okay. Moving on. So here's how I feel about peanut butter. Okay,
Yeah.
It's like a very Sometimes like I love it and I could eat it like right out the jar, especially like the Jif peanut butter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Very much a smooth peanut butter fan.
Yeah.
Not a crunchy peanut butter fan.
I agree with that 100%.
Right? The thing is that like I love doing this thing where I take a chocolate bar and like I dip it in the peanut butter. You know, I love that.
Yeah, they make those. That's called Reese's Pieces. That's called Reese's. But keep going.
That's true. But I cannot stand peanut butter on bread, which is like the staple of peanut butter, like peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter toast.
Yeah.
I cannot stand peanut butter on bread because it's just too dry. It's not good. It's not good. Just my personal opinion.
That's
just
wild because peanut butter covers a world of hurt. So I use peanut butter very, very often. Peanut butter is a fantastic food. I will die on that hill. Especially on bread. I'm gonna disagree with you right off the bat.
What?
Peanut butter on bread is fantastic.
Disagree.
I know you disagree, and it's a problem. That's all.
Please explain. Please explain to me.
Explain to you why peanut butter on bread is fantastic. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
Okay. So okay, do you like bread?
Yeah, I actually like bread.
Do you like peanut butter by itself? Creamy peanut butter. So what's your problem with putting them together? Two great things make a greater thing. Two great things make a greater thing.
That's like saying, okay, do you like pizza?
Yes.
Do you like chocolate?
I feel like I'm being set up. Yes.
Do you like chocolate on pizza?
Absolutely. 100%.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
Lies.
You're right.
Lies.
I am lying.
Lies.
You're right.
Exactly.
I am lying.
Exactly. Point made.
I feel that peanut butter and bread are... How about this? I think... You know what? We may disagree on peanut butter, but I think we can both agree that jelly and cream cheese is really where it's at.
Completely disagree.
Uh-oh.
What?
Really?
Jelly and cream cheese? Okay.
On a good piece of matzah, get jelly and cream cheese.
Okay, that's like but like I had like a traumatic experience with like cream cheese and jelly when I was a kid.
I have no idea where this is going. Please tell me more.
Okay, well, I'm getting there. But okay, so I went to like I think it was JCC camp or some type of summer camp when I was little.
Yeah.
And what they would have for lunch, or I don't know how often or like why I like so like frequently got peanut butter. I mean, cream cheese and jelly sandwiches for lunch. I don't know why, but I had it like every single day of like a specific summer when I was little, and like that just drove out the window because at first I was like, wow, this slaps. This is amazing. But
because it does slap.
Well, not if you have it every single day for an entire summer. That's the thing.
If you ate pizza every single day, you would still enjoy pizza.
That's true, though. That's pizza, though. That's pizza.
Yeah, well, you decided to compare peanut butter earlier to pizza, so honestly, this is your fault.
That's valid.
I know
that's valid. We're bringing in the comparisons now. We're bringing them in.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, very valid. Okay, that makes sense.
So, Anyway, tell me how was your week this week? It's only Tuesday, but it's okay, actually before we get into that, it's Tuesday, March 1st, 2022.
Okay.
We have gone through 2 entire months of 2022.
Yes.
That is so crazy to me.
No, that's actually impossible. How did that happen? I refuse to believe we are 2 months in.
Yeah. I don't know what your school's doing as far as masking goes, but I mean everyone around here, like all the elementary schools and stuff, are starting to go recommended.
Recommended, really?
Yeah, recommended instead of required. A whole bunch of the schools already did it, and JCC just did it also.
Wait, that's actually...
What?
Oh my god. Wait, that's so unsafe.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. The numbers are getting... All right, we're not going to talk about this, but my point where I'm going with this. Let me bring it back.
Okay.
It's March 2022, and we started this essentially all of the main stuff in March 2020. It is a full 2 years since real lockdown almost. And it's kind of crazy to see all of the bookends that are happening. At the JCC in 2020 in March, something that got canceled right away because of COVID was they were doing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as part of Stage Makers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the weekend that everything got canceled for COVID. Was the shows. So they had already rehearsed, they'd already worked really hard, and then everybody's flipping out last second because they can't have the shows. They ended up only having one show, and the one show they did have was like hand sanitizer in the back, and everybody was masked. It was crazy. Only a couple of parents. Like, it was wild. And so it's interesting to see now. Stagemakers just started back up again. They're doing Schoolhouse Rock. And so it's this ginormous bookend of COVID right now, at least in this community. Where we're seeing things come back to normal, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I think for, like, in some cases, in most cases, that's, like, amazing. You know what I mean? Like, seeing things come back to normal is, like, cool and great. But the thing is that I'm so used to, like, living in, like, this 2 years of just isolation. You know what I mean? And, like, yeah, like, college is very, like, for me at least, college is very, like, liberating, like, freedom, whatever, but you still go to class with a mask on. Like, I don't know, half the people in my cafeteria I don't recognize because you don't know them without their mask on. You don't know them with their mask off. You know what I mean? So it's very, very interesting, like, seeing how this is going to play out, especially because I didn't know about, like, the recommended thing. I don't know how it's going to play out here in Pittsburgh.
Well,
but
it's funny because if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, our big problem was we couldn't recognize anybody with the mask.
Yeah.
And now we can't recognize anybody without them. It's
without the mask.
Absolutely
there
wild.
You go. That's crazy. So now, like, here, it's, like, I also can't imagine myself going to class without a mask on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like sometimes when I'm taking a test, I'll chew on, like, the inside of my mouth or, like, grind my teeth or whatever. But, like, I cannot imagine, you know what I mean? I feel like that brings, like, a whole new level of, like, self-consciousness for, like, especially, like, teenagers or, like, anybody, you know what I mean?
I'll mouth things all the time behind my masks, like, you fantastic person, or, things of that nature, to other people when they do something fantastic. I'm trying to not say the things that I want to say. But there's a point to be made about how we are going to have to start being self-conscious about the fact that people are going to be able to start seeing our faces again. And that's a wild thing. I think something that is very interesting is the years of school that you missed versus the years of school that I missed. I think because I missed sophomore year I missed half of freshman year and sophomore year of college. Those were the years that were on Zoom. And I say missed because my learning style does not exactly relate with Zoom, and I did not get a lot out of the Zoom classes. And that's just me personally. You missed, correct me, just tell me, because I'm not going to guess.
Okay. I missed half of junior year.
Right.
And I missed a lot in my senior year.
Of high school, yes.
Yes.
Right, so you missed a much significant, more valuable and important part of your life than I did, for sure.
Yes. And I think I look back on it a lot because in the beginning of my junior year, I was, like, studying abroad, you know what I mean? With, like, all of my friends, like, everybody in the class.
Yeah.
And you come back, and sure enough, the pandemic just hits. And you go from, like, abroad, like, in a different country, like, no mask whatsoever, like, rooming with your friends. And then you come back, and it's like, a completely different world. And I think that was a big shock to everybody being online in Zoom. I ended my junior year on Zoom in history class, which is like crazy.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that. That's wild.
Yeah. So
That's
that
crazy.
was into my junior year. And then my senior year was just not normal whatsoever. Not in any case, any way, shape, or form. Because you were in person one day a week in the beginning, and that was it. And you would trade on and off between people, and they tried to give seniors as much time as possible, but you had to eat outside. In this, no matter what the temperature was, like, you cannot take your mask off. You had to walk on different ends of the hallways, because like a road almost, because they were so scared of people like getting COVID.
Didn't they do stairwells where one was down and one was up? Like they separated the stairwells. Yeah, I remember that.
And if you took the wrong stairwell, they made you turn around and go back up and do it again. And then they eliminated lockers, so all of your books had to be like at home and like bring the stuff you had for the day. Yeah, it was crazy.
That is wild. It was crazy. How was going through the college process and something like that? I mean, I imagine it was much different than the college process that I went through, obviously.
It was a lot more stressful. Like, there were some good aspects to it where, like, some colleges didn't require SAT scores, you know what I mean? Right. Which, like, kind of took away that kind of stress, but it was also a much more selective year. Yeah. So, like, a lot of kids who you would have thought would be, like, in, I don't know, Ivy Leagues, like, apply to them in the first place, like, just to not get in, because now that schools limited SAT scores, you have, like, an influx of people, like, applying to these schools. And also, you have, like, that half a year on Zoom. Yeah. Where obviously people have different methods of like learning, but there was like, you're online, so like how are you supposed to like test people? How are you supposed to get the actual grades that people deserve? Yeah. In person? So anybody can kind of apply anywhere senior year. Yeah. And I think that was like very stressful because a lot of people who really like deserved a spot in specific colleges just did not acquire one, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Because, you know, my brother's obviously going through the college process now. He's going to start. And he's starting at the end of COVID, which is like a whole different thing than it was for you. That was a whole different thing than it was for me. I mean, it's weird to look back at my college process and that was normal. Like at the time, I would never have to think. There was no reason for me to think that college processes after me wouldn't be normal. Like, that was not a thought process I ever had to have. Which is just, I don't know. The whole thing's wild. Let's talk about not super depressing things. So okay. I don't know how much you want to talk about sorority life at all, but obviously you had some big important things today in that regard. Yes. Now I'm not part of Greek life at all, Kutztown. And that's both because I'm a commuter, but also because I chose not to, because whatever, like I could have if I wanted to. So I don't know a lot about it. So tell me kind of, I guess you're just getting started. So how is kind of the beginning process of all that?
So sorority life did have some relation to COVID, like the starting off point, like the official point. Yeah. Because you have to interview with all these different girls and stuff like that, and like a lot of it was online. Like half of it was online. But then when it was in person, you had like girls like lined up down the halls in dresses and in heels, like waiting to interview. So it was definitely like a shock going from online rushing and then halfway through going to in-person rushing.
What point did they set where it was like, okay, now we're doing things in person? Like, when was that?
It was like the last 2 rounds of rushing, where basically like you rank different sororities, like how much you love them, basically. Yeah. And they kind of like rank you as well as a person. So then whoever you get back, you kind of like go to talk to.
Ignore that. That was an accident.
But yeah. So yeah. I think it was kind of a shock because the second half of it, there were a lot more girls than I expected, and it wasn't like you could just like be on Zoom, you know, like having like notes next to you, like nothing like that. It was like a lot of yelling because you were all in one room together and you were all wearing masks, so you can't read another person's lips. Yeah. And then people were like screaming, so it was like a very stressful experience, but still a lot of fun. Like, I'm a big talkative, like I love talking to people. Yeah. So I really have an issue with it. And at one point, there was this like sisterhood round, which is one of the last rounds in college.
Yeah.
And they split it up for between 2 nights because you talk for one sorority for an hour and you have 5 sororities to talk to.
Yeah.
The thing is I had English one night or something happened, but they put all of my rounds into one night, all 5 of them. So I spent 5 hours talking, just like talking over and over and over again.
That's crazy.
And wow, yeah, I know. So it's definitely stressful. And it's definitely a big jump from going online to in person. But so far, like, I've loved it. I found like a really great community. It's definitely boosted my confidence a lot.
Good.
I definitely recommend to like get involved in some type of Greek life if you are on a campus that advertises it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so today is basically the last week of Big Little Dates, which is basically like an older person takes you out to dinner, coffee, and they're there to like support you, talk to you. So yeah, and then you get your big in I guess March. So or the end of March. So yeah. So it was exciting. I had a lot today. Very busy. But besides that, it's been amazing. I love it. I've loved meeting new girls. I've loved getting out there in the community. So if you go to a big school that has Greek life, I would definitely recommend it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something where it was never kind of on the table for me, and I don't know if I regret it as much as it's just like, because obviously sororities and fraternities are very different.
Yeah, very different.
Extremely. But even the fraternity options were not something I was ever really super interested in. I don't know.
I think Greek life for guys is a lot different for girls. Like for us, it was like a series of interviews over the course of 10 days.
Yeah.
And for guys, they had like barbecues or like meeting at restaurants. And then, but the thing is that it's very grueling for girls during the rushing process.
I was gonna say it seems a lot less stressful for guys, but yeah.
Yeah, but then the thing is that it's way more stressful for guys during the pledge process than it is for girls.
Yeah.
Because girls usually don't like, do crazy stuff, but guys sometimes do.
Always, yeah.
Always.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you sound super excited about that. I don't know, the tone in your voice there sounded disappointed.
I am, but it's been amazing, and I love it so far. We had a philanthropy event for Make-A-Wish the other day. It was called Throw What You Know, and it was dodgeball.
Cool.
Which obviously I was not the best at, especially going against some sophomore guys.
What? So, you're not good at dodgeball? That's crazy.
But you can tell the guys are reliving their dodgeball glory days.
Absolutely. Intramural dodgeball? Excuse me, I am so good at intramural dodgeball.
Oh, well, I am not, so... There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah. But they were like, it was more toward dodgeball. The guys were like stretching beforehand and like warming up, which was like terrifying. They were like reliving their PE days. And I was like, geez, Louise.
So I think in a way you could say that you were also reliving your PE days.
I guess so. I guess I was, except my brother didn't knock out my 2 front teeth. So
Yeah. And there also wasn't scooters that would cut off fingers. Anyway.
It's true.
That's crazy.
Speaking of which,
my
younger brother's birthday is tomorrow.
Ooh. Older one or younger one?
What was that?
Older one or younger one?
The younger one. His younger one's birthday is tomorrow, and I definitely have to give him a call at some point, which sucks because I hate not being there on his birthday. You know what I mean? My brothers and I are really, really, really close, and I love them a lot. I miss them a lot.
Of course.
But it sucks not being there on his birthday. It really does. So, if you listen to this, happy birthday.
I don't know if he's gonna get this far into it. Do you know if your family's doing anything for him or?
So I don't know actually. Okay. I really want to know what they're doing for him, but I feel like my mom is gonna keep it very under wraps.
So that's something a little interesting, and we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but. Now that you're living for presumably the first time, well, not really, I mean, I guess you studied abroad for 3 months, but, really the first time living away from your parents, in this kind of setting, how hard has it been communication-wise on you? Because, I mean, I assume it's difficult. I assume there's no...
Yeah, it really is difficult. And I think it's like something a lot of college students just are not prepared for.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, and like overwhelming, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I have a hard time communicating with my parents sometimes, and we're in the same time zone. But I can't imagine, like, some of my friends are going to college here in Pennsylvania, but they live in California, and I can't
Yeah.
imagine the time
That's
difference.
crazy.
Um, but I think it's a lot sometimes because the freedom is really nice. You know what I mean? The freedom's so nice. You're with your friends, whatever. But you do also miss your parents, you know? And like, even if your relationship's like kind of wonky with them, I feel like it's a pretty common thing to just get like even like homesick, you
Yeah, for
know?
sure.
And I think finding time to communicate, especially with parents who have full-time jobs, you know, or like they're busy. Like my parents were in college, you know, so they have college to go to in the evenings, and they have work during the day. They have my brothers to take care of. But yeah,
you
so
know, conventions to go to and stuff.
Conventions to go to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really interesting, and I think what's interesting is that you miss them. You know what I mean? And like obviously, like, it gets better as college goes on. But you miss them when you're not with them. But when you are with them, it's almost like I have to kick myself to not take the time for granted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because once you're home, you fall back into routine.
Of course, absolutely.
And you're kind of just like, oh, like my parents are here. They're going to pay for my groceries. Or, oh, like I'm fine watching with them. Like whatever. I don't want to go on a walk. You know what I mean? It's very much like high school life.
Yeah.
When I go home. And, which is like very different from my relationship with my parents now in college.
Yeah.
So I think that going home, I need to get better at not taking that time for granted. And I think it's something that I don't really realize, you know? But yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So and I guess for you, like, I don't know what it's like living like at home with your family.
It's a lot different because I probably take the time for granted, obviously, but I think that it's something that like it's never something I'm really too worried about because I know that this is my home still, and I have a bed here, and I know that, you know, after class, I don't go back to a dorm. I go back to my house. It's definitely harder as far as like on campus life to like schedule in because you have to because you know, and I do plenty of extracurriculars, but then you also have to schedule plus a half hour to get home, right? So it's like you can do as many extracurriculars as you want, but then it's not just a simple walk back to your dorm. It's, you know, a half hour drive most times in the dark at night because most of the extracurriculars are at night. So
exactly. Do you think that like it's affected a relationship with your peers at all or no?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's put it this way, right? Not 10 minutes ago, right? You just have people running into your room, laughing, grabbing things, you know, talking about whatever, running out. You know, it's all fun and nice. I won't ever have that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not. So there is a bit of the experience I miss. I would have loved to live on campus. It didn't work out, which was fine. But you know, it is.
At the same time, though, yeah. At the same time, though, I feel like you've grown more mature because of it. You know what I mean?
Look, like, something I'll say in that regard is the work experience that I've been able to have by living at home and the work experience that I've gotten at the JCC has been absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm going to be a head counselor this summer. I would not have gotten that far if I was at Kutztown the entire time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm already. I mean, I just had a planning meeting the other night that was like several hours, and that would not have been able to happen. And you know, there's a lot of complicated work, ginormous spreadsheets that I helped put together, and
oh my god,
yeah, I mean, I've spent, you know, at least 15 hours now of my own time, and it's only March 1st. But you know, it's all appreciated, and that's not to say that it's not worth it. It's absolutely worth it. I love camp. I could talk about camp for 24/7. Like, and you know, it's an interesting aspect of like maybe because I'm not on campus and or enjoying all of those things. It's something for me to put a lot of my energy into, which I appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's also interesting how you have like the opportunity to work versus like me, you know, like
Yeah.
they're like, of course there are always options to work for college students, like babysitting, whatever. Like I have a babysitting job tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a lot more difficult to schedule working when you're living on campus than to not, because living on campus as a freshman, at least for me, like I don't have a car.
Yeah.
So, and yes, I do live in a city, but it's definitely more difficult to get a job here than I was expecting. You know what I mean? And then that's why I think a lot of students here resort to babysitting or just like a simple like walk to somebody's house, like underground type stuff. But I do think that like living on campus kind of does affect like the way people work.
Yeah.
And job experience, you know what I mean?
So that's an interesting thing as far as jobs that college students do there. Obviously Pittsburgh is a sports city. Very highly considered so. How far away is the university actually from the arenas and sports related activities? Like, is it easy enough for college students to get jobs there that it would be convenient enough?
I think it's interesting here because our arena, like our football stadium, is the Steelers Stadium.
Right.
So you can't just work at the Steelers Stadium as a teen. Like, you have to be qualified to work there. And again, with the Pete Center, which is like also like a concert venue. You know what I mean? It's on campus and it's like a big basketball. Like the Pitt owns it.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to get jobs at these places because you have to be like verified with the university, and like like you can work like the check-in things where you swipe your card, but it's not like you're getting paid a ton. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like I always imagine like if I ever went to college in a sports city or worked in a sports city, like I would want a job in something related to the sports venue for sure. Like just because that's a cool experience, even if it was like part time. Like I imagined if and I did I apply to Pitt in the end? I don't remember if I did in the end. I think I might have. But if I had ended up going there, that would have been I would have tried at the very least. At least I think so. I don't know though. Yeah. You know? Exactly.
And I think that like I've thought about it a little bit, and like babysitting's great.
Yeah.
Like I love kids. I'm a big kid person. And I don't know. I love it. But it's a lot. It's draining because it's a lot of social hours during the day. Absolutely. And you're trying to figure out how to keep them occupied for a couple hours a day. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a lot.
I feel like there's something to be said about always having to be on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also what you get in like on-campus living that you really like. I think it's just something about like always being on-campus living. You know what I mean? Because you have a roommate. Yeah. Unless you don't have a roommate, which is like fine. But I get along with my roommate.
Good. Let's keep it that way.
Yes, and she's amazing. I love her. But it really is like this feeling of like always being on. You know what I mean? Like you never know when your roommate's gonna walk through the door, or you sleep with your roommate at night. You know what I mean? Or it's like this experience of like always being on. And like, when do you get that private downtime? There are no private rooms. You know what I mean? You don't have your own bedroom to close the door. Like, when do you get downtime? And I think that's very different of like off-campus housing or like commuters where you do have your own room. You know what I mean? Like, you're with your parents, but it's, you know.
I get what you're saying. There is a difference between like, well, as you mentioned, when you go back to your parents, you kind of fall back into this routine of when it was high school and whatever else. Yeah. And I can kind of constantly be off at home because I don't have to be, I don't have to be like the social version of myself. I don't have to be the thing that is presented to everybody. Whereas if I was living on campus, I would always try and be that at all times. And I assume that gets very emotionally draining, which would probably limit the amount of work that I could probably do.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't be able to spend this much time on camp if I had to always be on. Like.
Yes, agreed. Exactly. So I do think it's a lot sometimes, but I think it's a good like experience. You know what I mean? Like you're learning how to work with people all the time. You're learning how to be an agreeable person. You're learning that who's going to be a good friend for you and who's not going to be a good friend for you. You know what I mean? It's a lot of like social experience that I'm appreciative of, but it does interfere a lot sometimes with, having your own mental health, you know, and like your own stability. And because you have a social stability here, but it's very different when you want your own time.
And on the opposite end, I may not be learning a lot about that, and I may not have the social aspect, but I'm learning a lot about working in a work environment, and I'm learning a lot about how to put in my all at work and how to make sure that the people around me that depend on me at work are getting what they need from me.
Exactly.
I mean, over the year of COVID, I had worked in J School, which was the program where we had all the kids on Zoom. The parents were allowed to bring their kids into us. They would leave them with us for the whole day. It was essentially a daycare. However, we did school with them. So we made sure they logged in. We made sure they did all their assignments. We communicated with all of their teachers, communicated with all the
Hmm.
parents. So that's 30 different schedules I had to keep in my head, 30 different behavioral differentiations that I need to do as like a teacher.
Yeah.
And that all got very difficult, but I am so happy that I got it when I did because, and COVID silver lining, as they say. Um, I was able to have a full-time job during COVID, which is extremely lucky,
Hmm.
and have work experience at a young age for the thing that I'm going into, which is absolutely insane. And it's gonna help me a lot in the
Yeah.
future. It's so there are pros and cons, there are costs and benefits
Yeah.
um to it all. So
Agreed. Agreed. And I think you also like, wow. I think
keep that in there.
good, good. I think also it's interesting because just socially speaking, like going into last semester, I was like pre-med bio major. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Because that's what everybody around me was doing. Everybody here is pre-med or nursing or some type of science pre-affiliate, you know what I mean? Which
yeah,
is like amazing for them. You know what I mean? But there's all this pressure to like the sciences, you know what I mean? And like the sciences are where you get a job, the sciences are this, sciences are like cool, you know what I
yep,
mean? You get to wear scrubs, amazing. But like it's I think it's very, very important to stop comparing yourself, which it took me a while to do. And I think it's very difficult, especially in school in general, like high school, middle school, college,
yeah,
to stop comparing yourself to other people and pursue what you love. And for me, I figured out that was like psychology and I love anthropology, you know what I mean? And working with kids. And I put the pieces together, like
yeah,
over time, that like this is what I want to do. But it took me ages. It took me through high school, through middle school, through the first semester of college. And I would refuse it. Like I would hate the fact that I loved something so much that did not fit into the social norm of my college.
yeah,
And I think it's really interesting that like these social situations can be amazing, but they can also be harmful to somebody
yeah,
who
yeah,
doesn't know what they want to do or who's very heavily influenced by their peers. Like that took me a lot to realize that I loved the things that I love.
yeah.
And I think, and I'm not like an easily influenced person. You know what I mean? I know myself, I know who I am as a person. And like that in itself took a lot of energy.
Yeah,
So,
it takes a lot of effort to get to kind of that point. I mean, I didn't become an education major till sophomore year of college. I was undecided for my freshman year,
yeah.
because I just didn't know what I wanted. I went into college with no kind of plan in that. And look, we can be honest. Nobody goes into education for the money.
Mm-hmm.
And the unfortunate reality of life is that you need money to survive and thrive. Um, and so it's speaking of being influenced by others around you. Um, our high school wasn't exactly super friendly to going into something that wasn't going to end up with a job that
Yeah.
would pay you a lot of money. Um, I don't think anybody else in my high school class is going to be working with kids or an educator. I guess I could be wrong with that, but
Mm-hmm.
um, that's not exactly what that high school ends up gearing you towards as far as the college prep aspect of it. Um, so I had to go in undecided. Despite that, everyone around me was telling me I would be a good teacher, and every time I worked with kids, it was fantastic. And every time that over the summer, I was fantastic with the kids. Like, at some point, I had to step back and be like, I'm good at this. This is what I am meant to do. I mean, I don't. I'm not the best at receiving compliments, obviously, but I mean, at some point, when
Mm-hmm.
everybody around you is telling you something about yourself,
Exactly.
it's not a coincidence. I got to be at least somewhat good at this. You know, I wouldn't still have the job that I do if I wasn't at least a little good at it. Um, and so now I'm pursuing it as a career and I'm learning a lot about the career. And it happens, and I got very lucky in this regard, that Kutztown actually is a teaching school.
Mm-hmm.
It started as a teaching education facility. That is what its history is. It has obviously branched out to more than that. They now have all the other different majors that Maine schools have as part of the state school system. But they are at heart an education school. And their education department is fantastic. And obviously, I could not thank any of my education professors more. It's funny because we were actually just talking about in class today, how whatever we're learning about how to teach letters because education.
Yes.
And my professor is very against letter of the week. Now you and I both had March. I guess maybe we shouldn't use names, but you and I both had the same kindergarten teacher.
Yes.
Who did use a letter of the week format, if you remember correctly, and she had those little bins with the little thing with the letters on them, with the little manipulatives and the little whatever.
Yeah,
loved that as a kid. But as I'm learning now with the alphabetic principle is that we're not supposed to treat each letter the same because some letters are just harder to learn than others. Some letters need to spend more time. Some students struggle on some letters and some students don't on others. And the education world is becoming more and more differentiated and more individualized from a learner point of view, which is just absolutely crazy and insane. So we got on a whole discussion about this letter of the week, and then I asked in class today, I was like, okay, so you've just given us this whole speech about how it's not good and we shouldn't do it, so why do people do it? And, it was one of those moments where I found myself, like, stepping back, like, I'm going to be in a classroom in a year's time.
Yeah.
Like, I need to start asking these questions about how I am going to do things in the classroom because I'm going to be there very soon, which is scary to think about. But then anyway, we got into a whole discussion about, curriculum and who buys the curriculum and the whole background of it all. And look, what it came down to is as a teacher, we need to do what's right for the kids. And that's our one and only job, is doing what's right for the kids. That's the most important thing above anything else. And I think Kutztown does a good job. The professors at Kutztown do a very good job of making that extremely clear. And giving us the tools that we need to do so. So I'm despite all the social things of not ending up living there, I am very, very happy there for sure.
Yes, which is good, which is amazing. And also the fact that, like, not that you listen to others, but you embrace the fact that you are good at something. You know what I mean? A lot of people who know that they're good at something kind of push it away, especially when it's like artistic talents. You know what I mean? Like, for me, when I still am, but I loved writing music in high school, and I loved playing guitar throughout high school. And
a known fact.
And as soon as I hit junior year, when the college process started, like, beginning, like, everybody was going through the same college process.
Yeah.
I, like, immediately dropped it because what I was told left and right was that there was no reason to go into music. There was no reason to go into the arts. There's nothing there for you, not a career, nothing. And that, like, was something that just hit me over and over and over again. And although people would be like, wow, you're so good, I love your music, I love the guitar, your voice is amazing, I would still refuse it because it just was not something that I was proud of. You know what I mean? I think that's what comes out of going to a school that's kind of not friendly towards people who want to pursue what they actually love to do versus a school that fosters this need for money and a need for a secure science-based job, which is science is the future, quote unquote. You know what I mean? So I think it's really interesting. And then you lose that level of appreciation. I mean, we went to a middle school where we had art classes every single day of the week. We had music, we had art, we had performances, we put on shows, we had an arts fest. But that was every single day. We had all these things that were fostered in middle school, and going to a high school where these things just were not as fostered or not as appreciative. I mean, you had the arts building in the opposite building across the road. And then if people played the piano in the lobby, you would be shut down immediately. If people, it would just be crazy. And it was frowned down upon if you performed in the talent show. You know what I mean? I was in 9th grade, and a little bit embarrassing, but I did perform in the talent show, and I brought my guitar, and it was
I remember.
Embarrassing.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yes, and I thought it was going. I spent hours learning this one song on the guitar, and then people were kind of like meh, and like it was like a meh performance. I mean, we did mess up a few times, but I mean, it was still something that like I loved. And if it's not embraced by other people, I think it takes a toll.
Well,
You know
look,
what I mean?
if you want to go with that route as far as not being braced, I mean, if you look at the high school we went to, there's a very specific way that you're supposed to be and a very specific goal that you're supposed to achieve in your life, and there's a very specific
Yeah.
path that not a lot of people really follow. And to your point about the talent show, I mean, look, I performed in the talent show. If you remember correctly, I did the lip sync thing with
Yes.
my best friend at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it took a lot to even get the courage to get up there. And while that's I would consider myself someone who, if you were to pick someone in my grade that was definitely going to perform at the talent show, I would
Mm-hmm.
probably be in the top 5 list. Like, that was not a
Yep.
secret.
Exactly.
But it it's crazy how that's looked upon as the special, as the individual, as the something that is not the norm, right? If you
Yeah.
think back, and you weren't in high school my freshman year of high school, but I think I've
Mm-hmm.
told this story before. The freshman year in December, for the first kind of big holiday that gave me the opportunity to like dress up and start
Yeah.
getting that as my name. Um,
Exactly.
I came to school in a costume, and it's one of those things where it's seemingly loved by all, and you get nothing but compliments,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing deeper than that, right? It's one of those
Yeah.
things where it's just like, oh, that's cool, but then you have to go to school the next day as if nothing happened, and no one talks about it, and you're just the guy who dresses up every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing deeper to that level. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
behind that. And I've told this part of the story where I went to the assembly in my costume. Obviously, nobody else is wearing one because that's unheard of and not a thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was called out by the principal for me to stand up, and everybody clapped and cheered and turned around and laughed in like a positive way.
Yeah.
Um, and while I look back on that positively, I look back on that memory positively, and I did enjoy that, and I knew that was going to happen going in, and I enjoyed that. I wanted to do that. That was my personality. That's
Yeah.
something I love, and that's what I love. It made other people happy, and that's what made me happy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of crazy how abnormal that was seen as, and
Yeah.
still is, for the record. If I showed up today, in 17 days from now in a costume, everybody else would be wearing costumes, but I'll bet you people are going to look at mine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they have a half day this year. But anyway, yeah, because it's like a Thursday. But anyway, and that's the one that you're supposed to dress up for, right? And it's
Yeah.
still seen as this
Exactly.
crazy taboo thing of like, oh my God, you're out of the norm. Oh my God, this. Like,
Yeah.
it's wild.
Yeah, and it's this sense of like individuality. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It absolutely crushes individuality.
100%.
And maybe it was just the high school we went to. Maybe it's just like the high school experience in
I think
general.
that's high schools in general. Yeah, I don't think we
Yeah.
can pin that on ours specifically.
Exactly. But
There's-
it absolutely.
There's a lot we
just-
could pin on ours specifically. But
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. But there's a lot about high school that destroys individuality, and then the people who actually dare to be an individual and who dare to go out and be themselves and,
Yeah.
dress up like you did, or, pursue art.
Or
by
perform like you did in front of the school, for the record.
Exactly. It's frowned down upon. And
Yeah.
where do we get to that point? Where do we transition from middle school to high school when it becomes such a horrible thing to be an individual? You know what I mean?
And I think a lot of that's due to the educators in the system, and I think that's something that I'm learning now is like, educators have been taught to teach one specific way. This is nothing against any of our educators, for the record. I loved almost all of my teachers at both of these schools.
Yeah.
But teachers have always been taught to teach a very specific way. Differentiation is so important to individualization and being yourself, and it's just not something that was taught until very recently into the education system, and it's something that like is really being honed in on now. And so like in 5 years from now, all of the fresh teachers, like me included and whatever else, are all going to be trying to teach this one way. And don't get me wrong, it is a lot harder to teach that way. It's very easy to go up to the front of the class, pull out the history textbook, social studies in middle school, and just start and tell everybody to close their eyes while you read the story to them, and wish you were there or imagine you were there, whatever it was called. Now you're there.
Exactly.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But it's really easy, and this is no shade at her, by the way. But it was really easy to go up there, read through it, ask for answers. If they don't answer this thing, you have to correct them, and that's it. Instead of trying to teach the material in ways that engage learners. And, our teachers did a lot of good and a lot of bad in this, as with every teacher will do. That invention project in middle school, I don't know if you remember this, where we had to create an invention and then connect it back to one of the history topics that we were learning at the time. I don't know if you remember this. I think I did it in maybe 7th grade, maybe.
Okay.
And that was probably the thing I remember most about middle school as far as the academics, because it was so cool to be able to do my own thing. Like, it was so cool to come back and be able to be creative. That's why some people like the science fair, because while you do have to have this cookie cutter layout, when you get to expand beyond that, it's awesome. I mean, for one of my science fairs, I went out to an ice rink and tested the temperatures of pucks and how far they went. I mean, besides the fact that, that was something that was really cool and really able to be individualized towards me. And, I got their place, so it was awesome. But besides the point, that's not the point. I don't know. Now I'm just mumbling. Now I'm just talking into the air. I don't even...
No, I think I get where you're going. It's kind of like, that's why people love the science fair. It's like, it's individuality. It's shown through and what you enjoyed, what you liked, what type of, in science. That's the thing, is like, once in middle school, science is a lot of fun because there's an individual aspect to it. And I think when you hit high school, this is just one take on science. I love science, mind you, but a take on high school is that you're taught what an electron is, what a neutron, like all these things that are very specific about science, very rigid, very like math, like numbers. It's a very rigid way of how things happen. Versus like humanities, where you get English, where it's like expressing how you feel and like your expressions, like history about like different takes on how something should have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think where it comes in is how much individuality you allow in the classroom. Like, where do you begin with making a problem about numbers? I remember my 9th grade year, my teacher would use our names and specific problems and like things that she knew about us, and it was amazing. Like, I loved it, and it kept me interested because it was like, who was going to be in the question today, like who was doing what, and it was so cool. Like, we had to like design our dream car and like find out the taxation, stuff like that, and like I thought it was amazing. Like, it was great. And I think in a way, like, I had an amazing time versus my junior year, where I struggled a lot with math because there was no individual aspect to it. It was like, this is what we're learning and this is what's happening. And I think even if something is as concrete as math is or as science is, even something more, loose as like English or history, I think it comes down to how it's taught.
Yeah.
Because there's an individual aspect to everything if you make it that way.
Yeah, I mean, and it's even those little things like changing the problems. I mean, that's something that's so little and so easy for educators to do, but it makes the world of difference. I mean, look, if you think back to elementary school, what projects do you remember, right? Because for me, I can tell you it's the animal diorama that we did in 2nd grade. Yes, I can tell you it's the math shop that we bought things with fake money and were able to buy like pencils and erasers. Like, those things are so fun and engaging and so simple. Do you remember what animal you did for your animal project?
Yes, I remember exactly what I did and who I was paired with. I did the Diplodocus for dinosaur. I did the orca for the mammal. I did the rattlesnake for the reptile. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. I remember making them in art class, and it was an animal I loved. You know what I mean? I loved them, and I loved learning about other people's animals. And it was incredible. Like, the teacher we had was actually incredible. And I think what made it amazing is it was animals we were interested in. You know what I mean? There were things that we were interested in. And art projects that really enticed us. And I think in a way, What I also remember was doing like an urban suburban project with my third grade teacher.
Yeah.
That was also incredible. I learned so much from elementary school, I think
we had different third grade teachers because I don't remember that.
We definitely did.
I don't know if I had a favorite teacher. I liked a lot. I mean, I think, I maybe before going into education, I would have had a favorite teacher. But I think now, learning to be an educator, I see what every teacher was trying to do, and I see where teachers were trying to be educators and where teachers were doing really good things. And I think a lot of our teachers, credit to them, did a lot of really good things.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with the way that I grew up, and very happy with the way that I was raised, and very happy with the schools that I went to. But it does say something about the general individual or lack thereof of individuality. Individuality.
Exactly. And I think it's really cool looking back and seeing how when individuality was fostered. Yeah, it really does. When individuality was fostered and when it wasn't, you know what I mean? I think that's really, really interesting. And I think there is like a social aspect of it with like growing up, there's definitely a lot that influences it there, but I think education is really cool. And for me, I don't know if this is any, I don't even know, I'm just going to put a tangent here, but I think individuality in a sense is really, really cool because and as an educator as well, anybody who works with kids, you know what I mean? Anybody who works with kids and knows about developmental psychology with them or knows anything about kids, realizes like how much of an impact you have on people. Like, for example, I was a counselor this summer.
Yeah.
And like going back to the whole compliment thing, like everybody was like, you're really great at talking to people. You're really great. You would be a really great therapist. Like, I see it. And like, that eventually I'm in the right track. But I guess like going back to what I was saying about a counselor, I would spend hours out on the front porch or back porch talking to kids about how they felt and their situations at home or their situations at camp. And I think it has a lot to do with who you have as a counselor, a teacher, an educator, literally anyone. You know what I mean? It has to do with who you have.
It gets to caring about the social emotional well-being of your students and of your...
Yeah.
Hold on. Pause for a second.
Okay, as I was saying before, I was a counselor.
Yeah.
And I really think it comes down to whether or not you care about the kids. You know what I mean? Yeah. There are some people who, would make great parents, whatever, but I think it comes down to whether or not in your profession, if you care about the kids or if you...
My boss's boss just said something like this to me, and for the record, huge shout out to her. She's been absolutely fantastic. She just started working in December, and she's been an absolute fantastic addition to our team, but she just said something like that to me, where you could come into work, and this goes for any job. You could come into work your exact hours, put in minimal effort, and go home, and technically be fine, right? Technically, you could do the minimal amount of your job, get paid what you deserve, contractually, that's it, and you're done. But you could also go in, work extra hours, put extra effort in, actually show that you care, and especially when it comes to education, caring about the children beyond belief, and not just going in, sitting on your phone, and vaguely watching the kids. And then while that doesn't get seen a lot in the moment, to what your point was, it really does make a difference in those children's lives. Yeah. When we look back at our schooling, like, we remember those moments with our teachers or our whatever. And the other part of it is, and it's kind of a life lesson, it's kind of a work life lesson where, like, okay, when a management's trying to pick a person for a promotion, who are they gonna pick? Are they gonna pick the person that clocks in and out, stick with their hours, follows the bare contractual minimum obligation, goes in and out? Or are they gonna put the person in who showed their extra effort, who shows they really care, and who shows, goes the extra mile? And, it's really one of those things where the innate ability to understand that in education you need to put in a lot of extra effort is really going to help in the long run in life.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think I think as a counselor, that really came through for me. I think this past summer, I had a lot of realizations about it because a lot of people, and like no blame to them at all, because I did the same exact thing where I wanted to come back to see my friends. You know what I mean? I came back
for
to
sure.
see my friends, but I also just I loved the idea of having these kids for the summer and like influencing them in a way that like they would learn to love camp. You know, like you have no idea how many girls came into that summer, never wanted to come back, like did not want to come back that summer, and how many of them left last summer being like, this was the best thing I've experienced in my entire life. And they said it to me, they wrote letters to me, and I like, not only does it go to show like the amount of effort you put into it, but I think it's amazing how I came back with the mindset being like, I want to change these kids' life. I want to go into this and make a difference and whatever. And I think there's a big difference between going back for yourself and going back for other people.
Yeah, 100%.
It comes down to that. Yeah.
I mean, look, in the education world and anytime working with children, you cannot be in it for yourself. You have to be in it for the kids, and you have to be in it for other people.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to know, you know, when you're talking about working with children, you have to have the ability to just be happy making other people happy. And it just it is what it is. There's a lot of extra work that goes into working with children that is really not something that's quantifiable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you know, and I think while I give a lot of credit to my current professors for teaching me all this, it's now very easy for me to look back at all my past teachers and be like, wow, here are all the things that a lot of them did right. And here are all the really cool things that they were doing that I didn't notice as a kid that I want to do for my kids when I have kids in the classroom. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's why education is like a very admirable job. Like, to your credit, Yitzi, I think it's really admirable, because you're not getting, you know, teachers don't get paid. They get paid practically nothing. I mean, my grandparents were teachers for their entire lives. You know what I mean? Like whatever. But it's the fact that like they enjoy what they do. You know what I mean? Like they love making an impact. They love being there for kids who are the future. I mean, my grandmother, when there was an immigration influx in Texas, I mean, back in like the 80s and 90s, she went back to school to learn Spanish so she could teach those kids. And like, not for any of her credit, not for money, but just so she could teach the kids who needed it. And I think it makes a large impact, because where would those kids be today if they didn't have a competent teacher enough to teach them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially in a state like Texas. So I think it's a lot of credit to the teacher, you know what I mean? And it really does come down to, in the end, I really just think it comes down to not the student, but the teacher.
And, you know,
especially in younger education, it can go both ways, but I think a lot of it comes down to the teacher. So, yeah.
And, you know, that's one of the main reasons why I chose to do pre-K through 4 and not any other grade level, because I think there's an argument to be made that what you learn from pre-K through 4 is the most influential things that you learn in your entire life. And how you are treated at that age will affect you your entire rest of your life beyond belief. And I think I would like to hopefully do that positively for some kids, which would be nice. We did officially hit an hour.
Yay!
Do you want me to? I can stop recording here. Hold on.
Okay.